So hi everybody, we're working on Module 2 this week. It's from September 11th till the following Sunday, which would be the 17th. And this is, of course, the class on judicial administration. The number for the class is 261. Rob Dawalt, I'm the instructor for this class. I'm just going to kind of go over a short video lecture on the module and what to expect. Important thing to look at is chapters 3 and 5 in your textbook. Chapter 3 is about the history and organization of the state courts in America. An important part of this is you're going to want to look at your state, share that with the rest of us in your discussion board. I think it'll be very interesting. We've already gotten off to a start on this by comparing New Hampshire. I think it's Cynthia and I were talking about this, and we're comparing Indiana and New Hampshire. The number of counties, the number of courts, you know, all these types of things. So you're going to want to look that kind of information up, and you're going to want to share that with us later. Now in Chapter 5, you're going to look at qualification, selection process, and duties of the judges. Kind of carrying forward a little further, getting into more detail on that whole idea of selection of state court judges. Then also, you know, you want to look at the history of this. Consider the different justice systems. Do they serve the interests of the people better, do you think? Or is one of the systems that you're going to see from other people, does that sound more interesting to you? You know, like I know I've worked in 2 different states, so I know that, for example, Ohio is a little bit different. So there is an article also to support your work. It's called The Difference Between Federal and State Courts. You'll find that in your module material. You want to definitely look at that. Another important thing is a website. Just Google on National Center for State Courts, state court websites. And then when you get into that, that'll take you directly to your state. And then you'll be able to look up the details that you need to include in your discussion board post. Now, discussion 2, 1 is research the judicial system of your home state. You can find that information on the National Center for State Courts websites, like I said. You want to give a profile, it says. You want to say, you know, are judges appointed or elected? I'd like to add, you know, do they use the Missouri plan, or they use another plan, or what we call a modified Missouri plan? How many levels of appeals are there? There can be like 1 level of appeals, or generally there are 2 levels of appeals, like a court of appeals and a Supreme Court of a particular state. One thing I would remind you is that in certain states they call things different things. Like in Ohio they have courts of common pleas. In Indiana they have circuit and superior courts that are both courts of general jurisdiction, just like common pleas courts. It's unique and interesting in New York because their general jurisdiction courts are called Supreme Courts. So that's a little bit confusing for people that are not familiar with New York. Also, one of the things we want to touch on, very important, is the difference between venue, which is concerned with the geographical best case placement for a certain case in terms of geography. Sometimes, you know, like a car accident happened in a certain county, and the case needs to be brought in that county, or in the county where the defendant lives. You have a choice of 2. And some other things, maybe you know, you don't want to use the venue that you would think be sensible. I was involved in a case I shared something on in another class I just taught, where we talked about a guy that lived in a little tiny county, and he murdered a little girl, like a 15-year-old girl. Very, very nasty, terrible case. But ended up, he asked for a change of venue because of too much publicity. The trial court denied that. We'll share that with you later when we're talking in our discussion specifically about venue. The difference between venue and jurisdiction, There's two kinds of jurisdiction. There's subject matter jurisdiction, meaning can I handle this case in this particular court? So a general jurisdiction court can literally hear any case. But a limited jurisdiction court could be like a juvenile court, bankruptcy court, or probate court, or like a city court has limited jurisdiction usually because it's like misdemeanors only, no felonies, and maybe traffic infractions, you know. Also, there's such a thing as a small claims court. That's a court of limited jurisdiction. So those are some examples of subject matter jurisdiction. Now, don't get confused, because in addition to subject matter jurisdiction, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this right now, but there's another thing called personal jurisdiction. So basically, what it means is you have to be able to bring a lawsuit against the defendant. And if the defendant doesn't live in your state, that can sometimes be a problem. And sometimes you get in that situation, you actually have to go into federal court and use what's called diversity of jurisdiction. So these are just some things we'll talk more about in our discussion. I'll try to add a few things like every day to kind of sweeten the pot a little bit, make it a little more interesting. Always remember that when you're doing a discussion, you need to reply to at least 2 other students. Always be respectful, ask questions. That's what makes it more interesting. And then once again this week we have a short paper on state and federal judges, and I am going to put some more information out there on this next short paper, the second short paper, because I want to share with you some of the observations that I had from the papers that I've graded from last week. There's a lot of obvious situations, us getting to know each other. I hear some of you saying, well, my other professors have never graded like you grade. Well, I'm trying to grade like I was graded when I was in school. And I've been in school a lot for a long period of time. So, I mean, as recently as 2012, you know. So basically, I've done some of this just to kind of keep up to date on how things are being done. One of the important things to keep in mind is that all these papers are supposed to use the APA. That's the American Psychological Association format. And you can find that at Purdue Al. You can also find it here in your course through the library. I will post a video that I did on that too, on the APA. So these are just some different ways that you can look at, some of these issues that have come up in the grading of the papers and what's important to me. Basically structure is very important to me. And I want to make sure that things like your safe assign kind of make sense to me. And basically that you're following all the rules, grammar, spelling, 1-inch margin all around, have a cover page, and have a reference page. Well, hey, if you have any direct questions for me that you want to share just one-on-one, it's pdawalt@snhu.edu, or if you're in a desperate strait and you need to call me, like if you're down in Florida, you got something specific that you need to talk to me about, feel free to call me 765-506-7322. Well, thanks. That's basically it for this week. I've got to post this up here today. This is Monday, and try to have one of these up every week during the class. I've enjoyed so much what I've seen so far, and basically if I've made comments to you, those are just comments. I didn't really grade anybody very seriously or severely. I think everybody got a pretty good grade on this first paper. So just hang in there with me. We'll get to know each other a little better. But, I am kind of a stickler on the basic structure issues of a paper to make it look like a professional paper and not some high school product. This is college. So we'll get working on that. I'll check in with you later. Thanks for watching. Bye now.